with a national championship game on Monday, it's very easy to talk matchups. We did it in our prediction video yesterday. But I think it'd be appropriate for us right now to rank the matchups that will determine the outcome of this game. All right, we got 5 of them. I'm going to go 5 up to 1, and we'll tell you which one is obviously the most important. All these are important, okay? These are the top 5. There's a couple we probably could have added on to this list if we want to do a top 10, top 15, but to us, these are the top 5. Before we move forward, 1, subscribe to the channel. Got a lot of content coming for you around this game and for both teams. Second, this segment brought to you by our friends over at PrizePicks. $5 in lineups gets you $50 in promo funds when you use code HARDCOUNT. So even if we don't win our play, you get $50 to play with the rest of the national championship game. Not a bad way to live. So at number 5, this is cliche. This is coach speak. But the reason why it's both those things is because it's true. The margin is going to be a massive matchup here. Now, if it sounds boring to you, I understand, but hear me out. How many times in a spot like this, in the last game of the season for all the marbles, do we go back to a game and say, oh, yeah, it came down to that play? It came down to, and I'm not talking about 4th down and goal, Deshaun Watson rolling out, hitting Hunter Renfrow, and that was the game. I'm talking about, like, special teams. I'm talking about fake punts. I'm talking about things like that. Like, for Notre Dame, man, that's how they've gotten to this spot. Like, Marty Biaggi, I highlighted him in our prediction video, but, like, special teams coordinator for Notre Dame doing work, man. Like, they had a 13-point advantage on special teams against Georgia. That won them that football game. Hit a game-winning field goal against Penn State to win that football game. They were 2 for 2. Like, the special ops for Notre Dame has been the difference maker for them. And if you want to beat Ohio State, you want to overcome an 8.5-point spread, you got to win the margins. So that matchup is huge. On the flip side for Ohio State, like, it's kind of how they lost their most embarrassing game of the season. I mean, the Michigan loss is obviously a huge black eye on the year, but we're not even talking about the Michigan loss. If you go 3 for 3 on field goals, like 1 for 3, and you lose by 3, yeah, it's bad. It's bad for business. Now, they've rebounded since on that side of the ball, but I'm just saying, the margins in a game like this, it's boring. It's hard to predict. I'm just telling you now, it's going to factor in some way, somehow. Regardless of the final score, the margins will factor in. And again, I think they're critical for Notre Dame to win, especially in this spot. Now, to get a little more X's and O's for you, at number 4, the trenches of Notre Dame's offensive line versus the defensive line of Ohio State. It's easy to talk trenches, and there's a great book out there from Trevor Moawad, and it's phenomenal. Go check it out. But it's called "It Takes What It Takes," and the premise of the book is like essentially, you're not asking why, you're not trying to quantify what's fair or not fair. Like, certain things require a certain input to get the output, right? Like, results are going to require what they require. And in a matchup, again, where you're an 8.5-point underdog, you need to have some kind of push up front. Like, forget pass pro for a second. We'll get to that in a second with Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau being absolute fiends. Notre Dame, they want to run the football. Like, you check their ID before you let them into the club. You're over 21, good. But you run the ball 55% of the time. That's who they are. That's who. I mean, they want to pound the freaking rock, and the past few games have indicated as much. They can't set the table unless they run the football, all right? We saw a massive turning of the tide for them in that second half of the Penn State game when, yeah, they hit some downfield shots, but those downfield shots opened up, as Marcus Freeman pointed to, when they started to just get north and south. They're pulling linemen, chips to the middle. This is who we are. If we go down swinging, but not because we weren't trying to be physical and run the freaking football. You cannot live in passing situations, like I just said a second ago. Like, if you're not having Jeremiah Love get those legs churning and breaking tackles, or you're not having Price get something going on the ground, if there's nothing on the ground for Notre Dame, then Notre Dame becomes a team that has to throw the football, which, 1, again, favors Ohio State. 2, it's not the game that Notre Dame wants to play. Like, as good as Notre Dame has been this year, they have been very dependent on running the football. Nothing wrong with that. But again, if that's going to be your song, you better make sure it's playing when you get to the national championship game. Also, on top of that, the field position part of this is huge. Like, if Notre Dame has a couple of 3-and-outs where they get a loss of 1, a gain of 2 on the ground, and then they try to throw the football on, call it, I guess that would be, quick maths, what, 3rd and 8? 3rd and 9? Because he's lost 1? Yeah, 3rd and 9. Not a great way to live. You turn the ball over, obviously via a punt. Probably a short field for Will Howard on that offense. Probably going to have to chase points. Again, even though you did against Penn State, I don't think you want to chase points against this Ohio State team and how good that offense is. So to me, that's the 4th most important matchup of this whole deal. At number 3, the Notre Dame swarm on defense. against these Ohio State backs. Yeah, in space it's going to matter. We talked about the Oklahoma drill side of this game and how it's going to factor in. If you want to throw Ohio State out of their game offensively, you got to change the rhythm, change their routine, if you will. Like, when are you not yourself? Don't get your morning coffee, wake up late, can't brush your teeth. Maybe you don't matching socks, you don't have those on. Maybe you're wearing the wrong thing to work. Whatever it is, your routine's off, your rhythm's off. That would be Ohio State struggling to run the football. That's a big reason why Texas had the success they had against Ohio State when it came to what they did on defense. You had a big play to end the half from Trevion Henderson, which was a tough situation, but 75-yard home run. Not a fluke play, but not one that you account for as being like, okay, our game plan lost to their game plan. And then you had the defensive touchdown. Ohio State, if you want to be really critical and nitpicky, Texas allowed 2 honest touchdowns. Talk about honesty. Can Notre Dame do that? I think they have to, because I have a hard time getting out of my mind what Penn State did on the perimeter with those backs against Notre Dame. When it all flipped for them in the second half, when they started to come back, you had a very quick trigger from the linebackers, from Xavier Watts. They got their read, triggered right away, arrived with bad intentions, and Penn State still got theirs to a degree in that game, especially in the second half, but that to me was when it all changed. You need it from Xavier Watts. You need it from Jack Kaiser. The Buckeyes average 5 yards a carry. If they can average 5 a carry in this spot, it's not just going to be bad for business because they're having success on the ground and they'll probably be content to pound the rock. It's bad for business because, again, we talk about the quick trigger. That's how you get caught with your hand in the cookie jar. That's how Jeremiah Smith gets one-on-one coverage, or Emeka Egbuka gets open downfield, or whatever the case may be. Not a good way to live, not winning football, and has to be a win for Notre Dame. Because if you can take away the rhythm, like I just mentioned, throw them out of the routine, you get to work, kind of hair's disheveled, you're not wearing the right thing, whatever. At that point now, it becomes messy. Messy favors Notre Dame. It does. Messy favors Notre Dame. Hear me loud and clear. The second most important matchup, we're going to go a little big brain here. Mike Denbrock, the OC for Notre Dame, and Jim Knowles, the DC for Ohio State. Say, yeah, JD, obviously, Notre Dame's got to have a good game plan. That's pretty fair. But what did we say earlier on in this live show? The talent gap is evident. I'm not saying it's massive. I'm not saying it's the end-all, be-all, but there is a talent gap here. This is not to knock Notre Dame. Ohio State, I think, has a talent advantage to just about everyone in America. Ohio State is 10 5-stars. Notre Dame has 0. Not saying they can't get beat. Notre Dame's been a talent disadvantage, I would say, for pretty much this entire playoff outside of Indiana. But in this spot now, where Ohio State has got arguably, you could convince me that all 11 are going to be NFL players here. You got to find a way to manufacture some offense. And people say that, and it sort of sounds like a blanket statement. What I mean by that is just find a way to isolate a matchup you like and go win it. If you can get a matchup, whether it be one-on-one with Jaden Greathouse, if you like it on the perimeter, or you get Ohio State to commit to the run game early and find some shots downfield, awesome, but you got to find something like that. I think it might take some trickery, some creativity, some sleight of hand, maybe some things we haven't seen from Notre Dame to this point in the year. You got to find that if you're Mike Denbrock. I feel the same way about this game as I felt about the Penn State game for Notre Dame. Every third down has got to be third and Riley Leonard. Not saying that he's got to run it every time, but it has to be within reason of calling a design quarterback run. Because at that point, then, what we said about Notre Dame having to run the football, kind of make it messy, can possess the football, make Will Howard and the Monstars on offense have to watch. Not that Notre Dame fears that offense, but I think it'd be nice to have them take less snaps. That would be a game that, again, favors Notre Dame. If you can't do that, if Jim Knowles got your number, Riley Leonard's back there and he's having trouble seeing it, no one's separating. Jack Sawyer gets home. JT Tuimoloau gets home. Cody Simon has it. It's not a good situation. It's not a good situation. You have got to have it when it comes to the coordinator matchup. Now, lastly, the Ohio State weaponry versus the Notre Dame secondary is absolutely huge in this one. Mentioning the weaponry, Jeremiah Smith, his PrizePicks square in this game is set to 80.5 receiving yards. It's got to be less than for Notre Dame. It's got to be less than. Now, I'll go ahead and say this. I think that the blueprint that Texas provided should be somewhat advantageous for Notre Dame in this spot, given they played a lot of zone coverage and kind of did what they did there. So I'll go ahead and take the I'll go ahead and take the more than there for Jeremiah Smith. I don't know that he's over 100, but I have a hard time seeing him be held to less than 80 in this spot. But regardless, man, the Ohio State weaponry, this is their strength of their team. Like, this is the yeah, but for Ohio State versus the we found a way for Notre Dame. Like, the yeah, but for Ohio State is we could talk about all those other 4 matchups we just mentioned, all those other 4 matchups. And if Jeremiah Smith goes for $160, 2 touchdowns, yeah, he took away the run game, but Jeremiah Smith got loose. Yeah, but Will Howard had a day. Yeah, but we just won our man-to-man coverage. Y'all play man 57% of the time. We won our matchups in that man coverage, and that was the day. Like, that was how we won the football game and busted that game wide open. For Notre Dame, if you can kind of, like we mentioned yesterday, throttle down a little bit on this Ohio State receiving core that's absolutely stacked. That could be the way where you get, again, you make it messy, you take away the bow and arrows, take away the Hunger Games Katniss vibe from Ohio State, and at that point, it's a fist fight, man. Like, Ohio State, they are averaging 300 plus yards through the air throughout this playoff, over 900 yards passing in this playoff. Comp that with Notre Dame's defense, they've allowed 200 yards per game, 600 total through the air, only allowed 3 passing TDs this entire playoff. Now, 2 of those touchdowns came from the fourth quarter in Indiana, against Indiana, rather, in South Bend. So, bottom line, it's going to be good on good here. It's big on big. It's going to be a lot of fun. So, I cannot wait to watch that one. But again, code HARDCOUNT, $5 in lineups, $50 in promo funds when you get that Jeremiah Smith square. Again, we'll take the more there on 80.5 receiving yards. So let's recap it here. Our top 5 matchups from 5 to 1 that will dictate the outcome of the national title game and who's hoisting the hardware on Monday night is as follows. Number 5, it's the margins, baby. Special teams, special plays, special forces, got to have it in national title games, especially if you're Notre Dame. You need it, baby. Absolutely need it. The offensive line of Notre Dame versus the Ohio State, terror up front. They have been with Jack Sawyer and Tui Maloau. Notre Dame's got to run the ball. Notre Dame's got to help Riley Leonard. Notre Dame's got to mellow out that defense. How do you do it? Run the ball. If you don't get a push, things get scary quick, fast, and in a hurry. And number 3, the swarm from that second and third level for Notre Dame against these Ohio State backs of Judkins and Henderson. Trevian Henderson's a home run hitter, man. He's got touchdowns of over 70 and 60 in this college football playoff so far. Got to get to the ball. Got to get there fast. Got to keep the explosives at bay. Right in line with that, if you're Notre Dame, be nice to have some explosives. The number 2 matchup for us is Denbrock versus Knowles. The OC versus the DC, back and forth there. There's a talent gap. This is not knocking Notre Dame, but there is a talent gap because of who Ohio State is. With 10 5-stars versus Notre Dame's 0 5-stars, you got to find a way to overcome that, if you will. And number 1, the Ohio State weapons, Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Egbuka, going to battle versus those Notre Dame defensive backs in Christian Gray and Xavier Watts. That's going to be cinema, and I can't wait for it. It's funny, man. I go back and watch our shows and kind of just do a review, and a lot of it is me saying I can't wait for it, or that's going to be a lot of fun. Is that a bad habit? Probably. Is it authentic and true, though? Absolutely. I can't wait for it, and that game will be a lot of fun.